You know how some people, when they get angry, they just explode, and others, they go completely silent. It's an emotion we all feel, but the way we show it is just so different from person to person. So, in this explainer, we're going to dive deep into the psychology of anger and figure out what's really going on inside our heads.
Right, so why the huge difference? Why does one person retreat into silence while another person starts yelling? Well, the answer is this really fascinating mix of our own psychology, our biology, and, yeah, our personal history.
I mean, just think about the sheer range of reactions. You've got people who just shut down completely. Then you have the loud, explosive outbursts. Some people even get violent or start breaking things. And oh, yeah, the classic, bringing up every single past mistake as a weapon. This variety is exactly why we need to get to the root of what anger is.
To really get to the bottom of this, we've got to understand what anger actually is. Because it's not just a bad mood, you know? It's a very specific signal coming from your own mind, and we need to learn how to read it.
So, scientifically, anger is just a natural, hardwired response. When your brain senses a threat, your amygdala, which is kind of like the brain's emotional command center, it totally hijacks the system. And here's the key: it reacts way faster than your logical brain. That's why we so often say or do things in the heat of the moment that we end up regretting big time later.
So, what's actually setting off that alarm in your brain? Well, it's usually one of these core feelings. See, anger is often just a mask. It's like a protective shield for deeper feelings like being hurt or disrespected or feeling powerless. It's your brain's alarm system just screaming, hey, something is not right here.
And this brings us to a really, really crucial point. Feeling angry is totally normal. It's a human emotion. The real challenge, and honestly where we can all grow, is learning how to express that anger in a healthy way. It's about turning that potentially destructive force into something that can actually create positive change.
Okay, so what are the things that make us more sensitive to these feelings? What's actually fueling the fire and making us more likely to get angry?
Well, it's a pretty complex mix. It could be something as simple as expectations that weren't met, or it could be something much deeper, like our childhood experiences that shape how we react today. And of course, things like stress, fear, and even biological stuff like lack of sleep can make our fuse a whole lot shorter. All right, now we get to the heart of it. We're going to break down 5 totally distinct ways that anger gets expressed. This is really going to help us understand all those different reactions we talked about at the beginning. First up, we have silent anger. This is the person who just shuts down. They withdraw, they won't make eye contact. On the outside, they might seem totally calm, but on the inside, there's a serious storm raging. They're literally swallowing their anger, and that can have some major consequences.
So, why do people do this? A lot of the time, it comes from a deep fear of conflict. Or maybe they were taught as a kid that showing anger is bad. But here's the danger: that anger doesn't just vanish. It builds up inside as resentment, and it can lead to depression or eventually a completely unexpected explosion. Next, we have the total opposite: loud and aggressive anger. This is the one we usually picture, right? The shouting, the cursing, the person who completely dominates the conversation with their rage. So, what's going on in their head? Well, it often comes from a deep feeling of losing control, so they overcompensate by trying to control the entire situation with aggression. The danger here, of course, is the massive damage it does to relationships. This kind of anger can easily cross the line into emotional abuse and leave some really deep scars. Okay, this third type. This is one that can be so incredibly frustrating to deal with. This is when an argument that's supposed to be about something happening right now suddenly turns into an argument about everything that's ever gone wrong in the past. This kind of thing is fueled by old, unresolved emotional wounds. The person feels like they're not being heard, so they start digging up old mistakes to try and strengthen their case. The problem is, this whole approach just keeps conflicts alive forever. It prevents any real feeling and creates this vicious cycle of resentment. Our fourth category is physical anger. And this is where the emotion becomes so overwhelming that it just spills out into physical action. We're talking hitting walls, breaking objects, or even worse. This is usually a sign of extreme emotional overload. The person's ability to think rationally is just gone. Their impulse control has completely failed, and the dangers here are severe and immediate. We're talking physical harm, a total loss of trust, and even serious legal consequences. And finally, our fifth type, self-directed anger. This is when all of that negative energy, that guilt, and that frustration, it gets turned inward.
This is deeply connected to things like low self-worth, depression, and shame. The person blames themselves for everything, basically turning their anger into a weapon against themselves. And this is incredibly dangerous. It can lead to a severe mental health crisis and carries a very real risk of self-harm.
Okay, so now that we've dug into the why and the what of anger, let's pivot to the how. How can we actually manage these super intense moments? Let's talk about a practical toolkit for finding some calm in the middle of the storm. So if you feel your own anger starting to rise, this 5-step process can be a lifesaver. First, and this is the most important one, just pause. That initial chemical rush of anger only lasts about 20 to 30 minutes. Don't act inside that window. Next, name the emotion. Just saying to yourself, I feel angry because, can create a little bit of distance. Then, breathe slowly to calm your nervous system. Find a healthy physical outlet. Go for a walk, splash some cold water on your face. And finally, challenge the thought that's fueling the anger. Ask yourself, is this really a threat, or is it just uncomfortable? But what if you're on the receiving end of someone else's anger? Well, the rules change. Rule number 1, do not shout back. You'll just escalate things. Instead, give them space. And this next one is key. Validate their feeling without validating their behavior. Saying, I can see you're really upset, acknowledges their emotion. That is not the same as saying, you're right to scream at me. Keep your language calm and neutral, and just focus on bringing the temperature down.
Here is a powerful phrase you can just memorize and use. It does 3 things at once. It acknowledges their emotion, it sets a boundary, and it proposes a constructive way forward. It's all about de-escalating the situation, not trying to win the argument in that moment.
You know, sometimes these tools just aren't enough, and that is completely okay. Recognizing when anger has become a chronic problem that needs professional support, that's a sign of strength, not weakness. It's about taking control of your own well-being. When anger is a symptom of an underlying issue like depression or PTSD, medication might be necessary, but therapy is also incredibly effective. Something called cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, helps you identify and change the thought patterns that lead to destructive anger. The bottom line here is to always talk to a professional to get a proper diagnosis and a treatment plan that's right for you.
So as we wrap this up, let's go back to that core idea. Anger itself isn't the bad guy. It's a signal. It's a messenger trying to tell you something really important about your needs or your boundaries.
The real enemy is what happens when that signal gets ignored or when it's expressed in a way that hurts you or the people you care about. The goal is never to stop feeling angry. That's impossible. The goal is to have the power to choose how you respond, to be the master of your emotions, not a slave to them. And that brings us to our final thought. The next time you feel that flash of anger, instead of just reacting, try to pause and ask yourself this one question. Really listening to the answer, well, it might just change everything.